We'll jump into today's episode right after this announcement. For over 13 years, something remarkable has been happening. Rural hospitals and other small healthcare organizations that have partnered with Capstone have been achieving results and forming workplace cultures that even we are blown away by. It is truly a game changer when rural hospitals are the provider of choice and employer of choice so they can keep care local and margins strong. Far more healthcare organizations need to experience what's possible. That's why we're stepping forward in a bigger way, expanding our team of experts, expanding our capabilities by adding a strategic planning division to expand our ability to help even more rural hospitals and other healthcare organizations in 2026 and beyond. Capstone will continue to be the partner that small healthcare organizations can count on to meet them where they're at and guide them towards a stronger future. You can learn more at capstoneleadership.net.
Whether it be Healthcare Week or you're planning a celebration for goal attainment, you want to celebrate that you're moving in the right direction, or maybe you met your goals. The celebration guide can be for any type of celebration. Doesn't have to be Hospital Week, but it can maybe spark some ideas, and that's what my hope for you is.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage.
Glad you're here for another episode of Culture Change RX. It is me, Sue Tetzlaff, co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions and the host of Culture Change RX. Today is one of those episodes where I have one of our amazing coaching team members in the studio with me, Julie. She's been with us here before. No pressure, Julie, but you hold the record for the podcast episode in the last 2+ years with the highest number of downloads and listens. So here we go again. Let's see if you can beat it. So today we're going to be talking about celebration and upcoming events such as Hospital Week and Nurses Week as well. And Julie is going to start by introducing herself, and then we are going to get right into it.
All right. Thank you, Sue. No pressure with that lead up. I'm really happy to be here today, and I am really excited. Employee celebrations is something that always brought me great joy in my role. So a real quick introduction of myself. I worked at our local hospital for 27 years, and 26 of those years I spent in the Human Resources Department as the Employee Relations Manager. And I also had the opportunity to lead our employee experience team, our employee training and communication team for over 16 years during my time there. So we planned a lot of employee celebrations and Hospital Week. And so I'm really excited to bring some of that experience to all of you today and to share about how these celebrations that were created by employees for employees and just practice celebration in our culture, in our organization, and how that's carried over in my role as a Capstone transformational coach. So thank you very much for the invite today.
Yeah, glad you're here. And this is a really, timely topic. I know that, as you coach our employee experience teams across the country that are doing similar things at other small hospitals around the country, that this is a topic they're talking about right now. So we thought we'd bring it forward to the podcast for others too. And I know that, you've created a celebration guide that is something that our partners are glad to have. And so at the end, we'll make sure people know how to get their hands on it too. So where do you want to start, Julie?
Well, I would really like to start with the why, because I think that's the most important of why we want to have a celebration. So, making a hospital week celebration meaningful is really less about giveaways and more about helping the staff feel seen, appreciated, and connected to the purpose. So, we found in our organization too that the biggest impact came from those little things. The focus on recognition, the small moments of gratitude, the storytelling that our staff and leaders and patients would share. So that's really where we found our greatest impact. And so it doesn't have to be a grand event. It can just be small, but really starting with the why and reminding staff why their work matters and why it's so important. And, a few ideas for doing that would be to share patient stories or thank you notes.
Mm.
So as patient thank you notes come in, hold on to those and maybe read one every day of hospital week. Another idea is have staff post moments that matter. So stories from staff. And that can be really rewarding and gratifying to read those. One of the other ideas that I came across when I was preparing for this podcast today was having a short video featuring patients thanking the staff, and getting them involved. In our organization, we had a patient advisory council, and I could see that being a great opportunity for actual patients recording a little video thanking the staff. So I really think, Sue, like the starting with the why is what's important.
One of the things that a phrase we use a lot is party on purpose, right? And so these celebrations are often parties and fun. Often fun and food is a lot of what sometimes these events focus on. But I hear what you're saying is really focusing more on the purpose, on the why of Hospital Week, our service to our community, our interaction with our community and our patients, and really connecting with that.
Absolutely. I think the next phase for planning a hospital week. So I said in my intro, like I led the employee experience team. And so we created a healthcare week celebration plan. We had action plans, right, for things that our team was going to accomplish, but we took it one step further and we had an action plan for the celebration and all that we wanted to include. And one of the key areas that we always wanted to include in our celebrations and making it meaningful is having leaders show up in person. What a great opportunity to have senior leadership, our executive team show up and show some gratitude to the staff, and being visible, having them have some visible face time on the staff or on the units. And so having that opportunity to show that gratitude, and our team, we set that up for them. So whether that be taking snack carts around to the night shift. And one of the things that I want to mention about that is in some of the things that I've read, it says, do that at shift time. Well, I can tell you that if I had asked our senior leadership team to come around at shift time, it might have had the opposite effect of what we were going for, right? We want senior leaders to be visible on staff, but during shift time when they're trying to do report and figure out the meds or the schedule for the day, that is not the time to be trying to show gratitude. Like it can have the opposite effect. So we worked with our leaders of those units to say, what is the best time? And we know in healthcare that there's not always an exact time to say, hey, the floor will be dead at this time. It'll be quiet. You can go there. That's just not realistic. But what it would be the ideal time where they have, maybe it's for the night shift and they have the majority of their patients have gotten their evening meds. They've been tucked into bed, so to speak. So for our organization, 10 o'clock was a good time for them to come in. So they would come in with a beverage cart at 10. And if we were having an activity in the cafeteria where we were sharing treats, but the ER was super busy, we had people who would run those treats to those units. And that really goes a long way of being able to show that gratitude. So focusing on leadership visibility and kind of helping them be successful in that role and not setting them up for failure. And some of this is learned from experience, right? We thought we had it figured out and we had great intentions, and then it fell flat. And so learn from our mistakes. We talk at Capstone a lot about copy and steal everything, make it yours and make it better. And that's what we would hope that you would do with this type of podcast, and like Sue said, if you stay till the end, the celebration guide, take that and make it yours and make it better. The other part of celebrating is to celebrate every role, right? Healthcare Week encompasses the entire organization because we all play a part in the patient experience. Even like I said, 26 years in human resources, in a roundabout way, I played a role in the patient experience. I took care of the employees so that they could take care of the patients and the members of our community. So, housekeeping, they keep infection rates low. Food service, they have the nutrition that patients need to be able to get better. So everybody plays a vital role. So celebrating everybody, making sure that they all feel included, and including those units that might not be on site, and being mindful of how can we engage the outlying areas. We had an inpatient psych unit that was 15 minutes from town. So we had, Sue, you mentioned Party on Purpose. We had key people in those departments that were our chief party officers, that they helped execute those. I could get a basket of supplies and things that they needed. Maybe it was a photo booth that we put up, so it was a little bit interactive. They would put that up in those units so that they felt included in the celebrations as well. So, celebrating everyone.
Pausing here to get healthcare executives excited about Capstone's 14th Annual Healthcare Executive Forum. Many small and rural healthcare organizations are operating under conditions that naturally strain margins, workforce stability, and long-term competitiveness. Strength today requires more than perseverance. It requires intentional design and doing. And that's why the focus of our Healthcare Executive Forum this year is on designing the future. It's all about where strategic clarity meets execution certainty. This isn't just another conference or networking event. This is where rural healthcare executives learn how to lead their organizations to true organizational vitality. If your plan or your ability to execute it is in question, if progress feels incremental instead of transformational, it may be time for a trajectory-changing strategic period. Be a leader in rural healthcare's new era, the era of organizational vitality. Register now and bring your executive team. It is true that the next 3 years may be the most defining period your organization has faced in decades. Visit capstoneleadership.net and click on upcoming events. See you in June in Madison. Yeah, that inclusiveness is so important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is day shift on the main campus. There's the off shifts, the off campus, even remote workers now. So lots of opportunities to get creative about how to include them.
Absolutely. Making it interactive. That's another part that we had the most fun with. We always had a theme when you make it interactive, and it increases your staff engagement when people participate instead of just receiving something. So again, some of those things that might be off the mark, you think we're going to give everyone a beach towel that has the hospital logo on it. Well, that you might miss your target. You might get more from low cost actual events like a decorating contest. We would have maybe a theme for the week, and we would have a contest amongst departments for decorating. A nod to your safety officers, though. Make sure that these are, what you can and cannot decorate with, right? Like, you don't want to put flammable, have it be a door decorating contest on an exterior door in the hallway and have it be flammable. That tends to cause problems with the safety and security peeps. So you want to make sure that you know the guidelines and can communicate those. But spirit weeks, we had superhero days. We've had a dress up or a dress down day, hospital trivia contest, word finds. One partner did a word find, scavenger hunts. So you have to go around to different departments and you meet different people and you see what they do. And so those interactive events have been very successful in my experience throughout the years, and some of the most rewarding. And the celebration guide has a number of ideas. What I did is I took a kind of a combination of all of the ideas that have come from that employee experience chat that you mentioned earlier, Sue. And we took a lot of ideas from that, and I wanted to be able to give them something that they could pull out as a starting point for brainstorming. So a lot of the celebrations that we've done in our organization in the past that were a big hit, as well as some of our partners and celebrations that they've had really success with. So it's meant to be opportunity for brainstorming. You might go through that guide and go, I don't really like any of those, but what about this? And
Yeah,
so
makes you think
even
about
if
yeah.
it might spark another idea, right? And so it's definitely not the be all and end all, but it does have, considerations, purpose driven themes, like back to the starting, like where do you even start with that? You start with the why. Like, what is it we want to focus on? What is important to us for this celebration? There's fun and creative themes. There's, again, the history of the partner celebrations. There's theme appreciation food puns, which is probably one of my absolute favorite things. I love a good food pun. So there's a number of those in there, and some low cost options, because it really shouldn't be something that breaks the bank, right? And it shouldn't be something that we do to just check off our list, either like, hey, this is on our team action plan, or this is something that we have to do. It should be something that we do with purpose. Like you said, a party on purpose. So there's some sample 5-day structures and making it meaningful too. So it's really packed full of a lot of great information. One of the other things that we have done, and I know that we've had some partner organizations who have done this as well and elevated, is offering moments of rest throughout the week. It might be a time to recharge, right? Maybe we have set up a massage chair, and staff can sign up in 10-minute increments or something like that. We did that in our organization. I know there have been some others who have also done that. A quiet recharge room was one idea. And we've also had the idea of a Zen den, right? An area that staff can go to just take a few minutes to decompress. Maybe the lighting is low, it's kind of quiet. You can go in there and just recharge. Sometimes we are in some really high stakes situations, and we might just need a minute to decompress, but we might not have the space. A lot of us are in rural organizations, and space is always an issue, right? And so, but maybe we can utilize or designate a space for just that week, to have a focus on just something small, for staff, to give them an opportunity. We had one partner, had a giant bulletin board that they took, and it was a coloring book, the adult coloring books that they have, but it fit the entire bulletin board. And so people could just pick up a pen and, color for a little bit. And I'm sure there are some people that are like, well, we don't need all of that.
When you're talking about this, it really makes me really reflect on how even in our community hospital, but now we see this with our partners, is that their culture of celebration, recognition, and appreciation really evolves over time as their organization matures and shifts into higher employee engagement and contributions, alignment with our purpose and our top strategic focuses. And so really that party on purpose, that takes on new meaning as celebration in the culture evolves. And it's just not about doing something. It's about making sure that it really is in alignment with our culture of celebration, and that it's meaningful, it's memorable, it's sincere, it's inclusive, and like you said, it's more engaging, interactive. But even with that, I don't know how to exactly say it, but you can get eye rollers, in the organization where employees still think that celebrating is a waste of time, or the money and time should be spent on other things in the organization than celebrating healthcare week or whatever. So what would you have to say about that dynamic that at some level, even if it's small, exists in healthcare organizations or even any business?
I can share from personal experience. In my role, our team and myself worked very hard to make that week phenomenal and have it be a positive experience. And one of the events we had at the end of the week, we had an employee barbecue, and it was free lunch for all the staff. Our food service director and myself was like, okay, well, it's free food for the staff, but the food nutrition department has to, they have to prepare this. And so could we do something special for them? And so we did something special for them. And there was one employee specific that was very verbal about, that's not necessary. That's a waste of money. Like, because we gave them each a little $5 Dairy Queen gift card. That's a waste of money. We were just doing our job and what we're supposed to do. And so, that can be really disheartening, because you really wanted to show some genuine gratitude and recognize the fact that you're preparing this celebration, this big meal, and we recognize that, and we appreciate you for having a part in this celebration experience. And I'm going to be very, very honest and sincere when I tell you that one of the early years of Hospital Healthcare Appreciation Week resulted in me actually going to our employee assistance program, because I was devastated, because I'm a people pleaser and I wanted everyone to be happy. And there was one person who was very, very negative, and I took that personally. So I thought, I need to figure out how I can address this, right? Like, how can I respond to this? And so I went and I met with our employee assistance counselor, and it was a really valuable meeting. We had one meeting, and they reinforced that we had probably 500 employees at the time. And there was one person who was mean and very verbal about their dissatisfaction with what we were doing. But that was only one. And so, I know you've probably heard this if you've been to any of our capstone trainings. Positivity whispers, but the negativity screams at us, right? And I felt that. I felt that to my core, and I felt like it wasn't successful. But when I stepped back with that lens, and I realized that there were a number of employees who actually expressed gratitude. Thank you for such a great week. Thank you for this family fun event that you put together. And that's when I realized that you're making a difference for the majority. And while it's disheartening that one person was very loud and very negative, I had to realize that I had a far greater impact on the greater good. So I think that's important too, to share that, it's not just all the fun and the celebration, that it can be challenging when that negativity starts to scream at us, but just stepping back and trying to reflect and say, okay, but we've made a great difference to the majority. And you probably remember that Sue, at the time.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're willing to share it too, Julie.
Well, I feel like it's, I want to be real, right? Because it's not just, I was the employee relations manager for 26 years, and it was amazing, and we never had any pushback. And oftentimes that pushback is not a reflection on what we're trying to do. It's really just maybe the situation that they're in, or their overall personality. Some people you're not gonna please everyone. But so I felt like that was kind of an important thing to share, because if you're feeling that, know that it's normal, I guess is my biggest message
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. 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 It's hard, when you have a huge organization and you're planning something that's an organization wide, activity or event or celebration that, it is probably impossible to really make everyone happy and believe that it's, the best use of time, energy, and money. So yeah, focusing on the greater good for the many. So, and that's
Yeah.
really the spirit of it too, right? Is you're not looking for perfection here. You're looking to provide, a celebration that's meaningful and memorable and impactful in a positive way. So yeah, and it can take so many different forms, as you mentioned already, and the celebration guide continues, provides more information on that, is all the different ways that could be carried out. So is there anything else in the celebration guide that is packed in there that you think folks might be interested in seeing in the guide?
It's an 11-page document that I would have loved to have had when I was leading an employee experience team and our group was gathering to brainstorm and figure out what we wanted to do. Just the considerations, the things that you might want to make sure that you think about. Evolving a community. That's something too, that you have an opportunity to bring the community in and celebrate with them. In our organization, our employee experience team, we hosted what was called a teddy bear clinic. And so we invited all of the little people in our community. We sent flyers home from school, and they had an opportunity to come into, we had them come in. We had a rehab center entrance that was kind of off the back. So it wasn't in the main emergency room, but a lot of the ER nurses and our clinic nurses volunteered to man that. So how it worked is you brought in your doll or your teddy bear, and these little people brought their kids to the doctor, if you will. So we used it as an opportunity to also do some teaching. We taught them about proper nutrition and how important it was for them to sleep. And actually, it would help ease some anxiety if they had to come in themselves as patients. And we did that every year for many, many years. We used that as our event to, get the community involved in hospital week. That was one of the things that we did in our organization. But you can also, display community thank you messages, as we celebrate Healthcare Week. Thank you for choosing us for your healthcare needs. We had thank you notes, just a little note that was designed by a member of our team that went up on all the patient trays on their meals, thanking them for choosing our organization, because it is a choice. And it's even more of a choice now than it was, back in the early days when we started this. So, but there's a lot of budget awareness things in that guide as well too, Sue, that can help you if you're dealing with a minimal budget. Like I said, I'm really proud of how that turned out and the work that we put into that. So they're going to want to check that out. One of the other things as we think about a celebration week is encouraging peer recognition. So at Capstone, we talk a lot about and we advise having a peer-to-peer recognition program. And this is a great opportunity to maybe refresh that or encourage that, staff showing recognition and gratitude to each other. So sometimes that goes, a lot farther than
I
even
agree
a
with that because a lot of times I remember this as an executive, is that it felt like a lot of the, effort to bring forth, recognition and appreciation and celebration was leader to employee. At least that was the early kind of application of these kind of celebratory efforts. But like I said, that evolved over time, and then it really shifted to more community recognition of staff and then staff to staff recognition. And that it really is more a term one of our partners coined is omnidirectional, like that recognition and appreciation is coming from all sorts of directions. And yeah, and there's a way to foster that and promote that. And then eventually it'll just be kind of expected or even organic, even outside of these weeks.
Absolutely. One of the powerful tips that I was thinking of too that you could do is ask staff. So we talk about strengthening relationships through rounding, right? That's one of our 9 core leadership practices is strengthening relationships. Have one of the focus questions be, what makes you proud to work here? And then sharing these answers across the organization throughout this entire week might be a great opportunity to share that, like what makes you proud to work here? And let's be proud this week and share some of that. So we always ended our week with a big celebration of, it was usually a hospital picnic or a cookout. That we have a parking garage. And so we would rent the space at the parking garage. And so there was a opportunity to eat outside and be a little bit different. Ice cream socials and even a leadership thank you video. You could do something like that. Community appreciation messages. One of the cool things that our businesses did in our community because they were so appreciative of our staff is they offered discounts for the first 2 weeks of May, some even the entire month of May. If you had your hospital badge, they'd offer you a 5 or 10% discount as a thank you for your service.
Nice.
So
very nice. Fantastic. So for folks to get this guide, I have a couple ways to do it. I think definitely putting it in the show notes is one way to do it, but I think also Whitney could help us out with this in our office. Is if we had people email info at capstoneleadership.net, they could request it by email too if they prefer to get one that way. So thanks, Julie, for putting the guide together and being willing to talk about this important topic of celebration in our workplace cultures and doing that in evolving and more meaningful and purposeful ways. Anything as we wrap up that you just want to mention before we close?
No, I can't think of anything. I really enjoyed being a guest on here today and being able to share some of my experiences, and I hope it's been valuable. I hope this is something that you pull out when you're trying to plan a celebration and figuring out where to start. And I really hope that you take advantage of that celebration guide and find some value in that. I am confident that there is at least one pearl in that. And that actually makes me think of something that I wanted to say. I talked about that negative person and their feedback, and I don't want to discredit their voice. Okay. It's important to also look at that through a lens of, is there an opportunity for improvement here? I don't want to be reactive and upset or just discredit it because, well, there was 500, so 499 are happy and one is dissatisfied. There may be a pearl in there. There may be a pearl or an opportunity, something to consider. And maybe they're just the bravest person who said something. So we have a lot to learn from those negative voices as well, but we can't let them get us down. We have to remember that we've made a difference to the majority. So that did make me think of one thing. So I wish you all the best as you're planning this celebration, and whether it be Healthcare Week or you're planning a celebration for goal attainment. You want to celebrate that you're moving in the right direction, or maybe you met your goals. The celebration guide can be for any type of celebration. Doesn't have to be hospital week, but it can maybe spark some ideas. And that's what my hope for you is.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right that, beyond hospital week, which I know you put this together with that in mind to support our partners, it really could be used by individual departments and leaders, other types of organization-wide celebrations, and very useful to many people in many ways. So again, thank you, Julie, for offering up this guide and sharing some of the wisdom behind it here with us today. Thanks again, Jules.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.